Hola estudiantes, welcome back to Lección 3, el subjuntivo. Today we're going to be working on the irregulars, spell changers, and stem changers in the subjunctive. You should be taking notes on pages 10 and 11 in your packet during this presentation. As always, feel free to stop or rewatch as needed. Today, you're going to continue to learn how to form verbs in the subjunctive. Once we've practiced these, then you're going to learn when to use the subjunctive. We'll be working on that next week. Here's a review of what we did in the previous class. There's 3 steps to forming a regular verb in the subjunctive, and we used hablar as our sample. First, you conjugate the verb in the yo form in the present tense, hablo. Then you erased the o. And then you added the endings from the opposite verb chart. So you used es for an AR verb, and you used as for an ER-IR verb. Here you ended up with hable. That was our yo form, and then we carried that throughout the chart using the standard present tense endings. Again, this is a review of what we did in the previous class. Today, we're going to be looking at some irregular verbs. Some verbs have an irregular yo form that do not end with an O in the present tense. These verbs don't follow the pattern you just learned, and so they must be memorized. If you memorize the yo form in the upcoming slides, you should be able to use that to fill in the rest of the chart. Don't stress over having to memorize 6 different forms. Dar, to give. The yo form in the present is doy. So you see that doesn't fit our pattern of just deleting an O. The yo form is de. Notice that the yo and the L forms have accent marks so that they do not look the same as the word of or from. De, des, de, demos, des, den. You can see once you know that you should use de, that you continue it through the chart with the usual to, nosotros, vosotros, ellos endings, etc. Again, we need those accents so it looks different from the word of or from. Estar, to be, for locations and states of being. The yo form is usually estoy. Esté, estés, esté, estemos, estés, estén. This is very similar to the present where we had a lot of accent marks on the letter A. Now they're here on the E, basically in the same places. If you use the trick in the present that there were accents on all the A's except nosotros, it happens again here. There's accents on all the E's except nosotros. Haber, there is or there are. In the present tense, you had one form of this, which was I. As you can see, there's an entire chart. Haya, hayas, haya, hayamos, hayáis, hayan. However, in this unit, you will only use the el, ea, usted form of this verb. Right? We will need the whole chart later in the year, but for now, if you're ever wanting to use this verb, you should just write haya. Ir, to go. The present tense yo form was voy. Vaya, vayas, vaya, vayamos, vayáis, vayan. Saber, to know facts or to know how to do something. The present tense yo form was say. Sepa, sepas, sepa, sepamos, sepáis, sepan. Ser, to be, for description, time, date, profession, origin, etc. The present tense was soy. Sea, seas, sea, seamos, seáis, sean. Next, we'll look at the group called spell changers. The spell changers in the subjunctive are car, gar, zar verbs. Some verbs need a spelling change in order to maintain the original sound. So if you listen to the verb sacar, you can hear it has a hard K sound. The yo form usually is yo saco. So if I just went through my subjunctive process and deleted the O and then added a E, you can see there next to the red X what I would end up with. However, if I pronounce that, it sounds like yo sase, which now doesn't have that hard K sound. So I have to do something to maintain that K. So the yo form in the subjunctive is yo sake. The same thing happens with jugar. The yo form is yo juego. If I just take the O away and put an E, I end up with yo juegue, right? It's a soft G. It doesn't maintain that original sound, right? These are very hard for me to pronounce incorrectly. So really, I want it to be yo juegue. So I added that U to get the hard G sound. With almorzar, the yo form is yo almuerzo. So I end up with yo almuerce. Usually the Z doesn't go next to an E, so I switch it to a C, yo almuerce. This would be true for all of the car, gar, zar verbs that you know. You may remember the same thing happened in pretérito. So if you're looking at some of these thinking, oh yeah, I think I've seen this, it is similar. There's just no accent marks here on the yo forms, right? In the preterite, there was the yo form, and then with the accent. And then you notice here that jugar and almorzar, they're stem changer verbs. And so you see I do have that for the yo form. A spell change is different than a stem change, right? So sacar is just a spell changer because all I did was put the QUE. Jugar is a stem changer and a spell changer because I have the original U to UE, and then I added the U after the G to get the G sound. Just like in the present tense, if you have a car, gar, zar verb, do not stem change in nosotros and vosotros. I would still put the U after the G or the Z goes to C in all the forms. That's a spell change, not a stem change. So you'll see the whole chart on the next couple screens, and hopefully that will help clarify the difference. Sacar, to take out. This will be our example of a car verb. So you saw on the previous slide that we had yo sake. Then I take that and use that through the whole chart. Saques, sake, saquemos, saquéis, saquen. Here you see that I kept that spell change the entire time. Every single time it had the QUE. At the bottom, I put a couple more car verbs that you're responsible for. If you need to write any of these down, feel free. Buscar, to look for. Marcar, to dial. Pescar, to fish. Practicar, to practice. And tocar, to play instruments or to touch. Jugar, to play sports or games. Here you'll be able to see that this is a stem changing verb, and I did not stem change in nosotros and vosotros because it ends with AR. You can notice that I did keep the GUE every time. That part is the spell change. Juegue, juegues, juegue, juguemos, juguéis, jueguen. You're also responsible for llegar, to arrive, pagar, to pay, and regar, to water plants. Almorzar, to eat lunch, is also both a stem changer and a spell changer. You can see I did not stem change on nosotros and vosotros because this is an AR verb, but I did keep the C, which is the spell change, throughout the entire chart. Almuerce, almuerces, almuerce, almuercemos, almuercéis, almuercen. You're also responsible for abrazar, to hug, comenzar, to start, empezar, to start, and organizar, to organize. You should have finished page 10 and should now be on page 11 to work on stem changers. In the present tense, there were different types of stem changers, such as E to IE, E to I, O to UE, U to UE, but they all followed the same rules, and they didn't change in nosotros or vosotros. In the subjunctive, they don't all follow the same rules, so you have to pay really close attention to the verb endings, AR, ER, IR, to know how to do the stem change in subjunctive. If you have an AR or ER verb that is usually a stem changer, these are easy. You get to follow the old stem changing rules, and you do not stem change in nosotros or vosotros. You saw this earlier with jugar and almorzar, right? Were two examples of AR that you already had. Contar, to count or tell stories. Cuente, cuentes, cuente, contemos, contéis, cuenten. Notice I did not stem change in nosotros and vosotros because this is an AR verb. Poder, to be able to or can. Pueda, puedas, pueda, podamos, podáis, puedan. Again, I did not stem change in nosotros and vosotros because this is an ER verb. Some stem changers that you've seen with AR, ER, and that you're responsible for are almorzar, to eat lunch, cerrar, to close, comenzar, to start or begin, contar, to count or tell stories, empezar, to start or begin, encontrar, to find, entender, to understand, mostrar, to show, pensar, to think or plan, perder, to lose, poder, to be able to or can, recordar, to remember, recomendar, to recommend, rogar, to beg, sonar, to ring or sound or beep, volver, to return to a place. Stem changing works a little differently for an IR verb. If an IR verb has a stem changer with two letters, such as O to UE or E to IE, you'll only take the first letter in nosotros and vosotros. If an IR verb has a stem changer with only one letter, such as E to I, you'll use the stem changer in all of the forms. So when you have an IR verb, something happens in every form. You have to be careful that something different might happen in nosotros and vosotros when it's two letters, or it's the same for everything when it has one letter. This will probably be the group where you should do the most time studying, either on Quizlet or writing them out. This tends to take a little bit of extra concentration. Dormir. This is an example of an O to UE. So usually it has two letters, which means I'm only going to use the first letter in nosotros and vosotros. Duerma, duermas, duerma, durmamos, durmáis, duerman. Preferir, to prefer. This is an E to IE verb, so again it has two letters, which means I will only take the first letter in nosotros and vosotros. Prefiera, prefieras, prefiera, prefiramos, prefiráis, prefieran. Pedir, to order or ask for, is a one-letter stem changer. It's E to I. So then I just leave the I for the whole chart. Pida, pidas, pida, pidamos, pidáis, pidan. Some IR stem changers are despedir, to fire, divertirse, to have fun, invertir, to invest, morir, to die, preferir, to prefer, repetir, to repeat, servir, to serve, sugerir, to suggest, vestirse, to get dressed. You'll notice I've put stars next to despedir and invertir. Those are from a list that we had to move to another spot this year due to changes in our scheduling, with things taking a little more time or spending a little more review at the beginning of the year. So we left them on the list here, but we will not be including those two verbs on the test. So a review of what we did today. You had your 6 irregulars. You just have to memorize those, right? Many of them were something that had a Y in the yo form, right? Like ear with voice, ser, soy. And so you had to memorize a new form. Then we had our cargar zar, where we had a spell change to maintain the sound. And if you can remember these verbs in preterite, it was pretty similar without the accent mark, right? To make the yo form. And then we had our 3 different types of stem changers. And you had to really watch out for the endings. The AR, ER verbs did not stem change in nosotros and vosotros, just like you're used to. And then with the IR group, you had to see if it had 2 letters, you took only 1 letter in nosotros and vosotros. And if it was already one with only 1 letter, then you kept that letter throughout the entire chart. Again, there will be Quizlets for these. We'll be doing practices. So you have some time to work on these. And you are now finished with how to form the subjunctive.